Hello, everybody. This is John and Matt. He's
Hello.
right over there on the in the voice space,
On
and
the interwebs.
um, this is Graphically Christian podcast. And for those of you who don't know, we make a magazine quarterly called The Gauntlet. Um, it has Christian based short stories, short comics, poetry, art, all those good things. And
Wonderful, wonderful things.
that's our first issue is going to premiere at Wizard World Philadelphia. Uh, that's June 19th to 22nd at the Philadelphia Convention Center. And it'll be available later on in the month for digital viewing. So on our website, graphicallychristian.com. As for this podcast, our topic is vaguely spiritual and supernatural programming on television because my esteemed colleague and I have noticed a hash of those recently, what with Resurrection and uh, some show called Touch that premiered a little while ago with Keeper Sutherland. Um,
Yeah.
and
There's that Believe show, I think.
yes,
There's a couple others. There's that one show you wrote an article on too about the rapture type thing that's coming.
right, that's called The Leftovers. It's coming to
Yeah.
HBO. Uh,
And then I think there's another one, Dominion. Is that? I feel like that has religious themes as well. I'm
Right,
not
yeah,
sure
that's
though.
an angels versus demons sort of thing. It's like a
Oh, okay.
the angels basically like fought humanity, and this is like 25 years after the war began, and
Oh.
they're like they've there's one, and apparently it's based off the Legion movie that had Paul Bettany as the.
Really? It's based off of that movie.
Yep.
That's gonna be your that's gonna be your canon material.
uh,
Okay.
so like
All right.
apparently he saved the baby. That's sort of like the like in Terminator, he's like the Jonathan,
He saved John Connor. Okay.
right? Basically for this war, and so John Connor, or the equivalent, is going to be the hero in the Dominion show. Um,
Gotcha.
it's on the Sci-Fi Channel, so nobody's going to watch it. No, I'm
That
kidding.
I can honestly that I can respect a little bit more, because at least that's like, hey, this is super sci-fi, supernatural stuff. It's not just like quasi-religious. It's just like, hey,
Right.
we're using this stuff to just make like a like pretty awesome sci-fi show or like supernatural type show. Like I don't really have that. But anyway,
So
segueing into the
I'm
other
gonna go
ones.
down a list here, and I'm gonna see if you've heard any of these other ones, and we can sort of
Okay.
decide for ourselves whether we think like one of these was like the touchstone in terms of like getting more of these produced. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I brought up before Lost, and
All right.
you were sort of saying before when we talked about it that um, it didn't really get religious until the end, and I would agree with you in terms of like definitive terms because um,
Yeah.
the most it flirted with it was with any like established religion was with Echo because of his brother being a Catholic priest, um,
Right.
and then like the island used his brother Yemi as like an avatar, and it
Uh-huh.
sort of seemed like the island was like punishing Echo, and the fact that they were tying that to sort of like a like godlike wrath or something, that seemed like it was flirting with religion. But other than that, there's like anything from like spirit, like like healings, to like Kate thinks that her ghost, the ghost of her father had like possessed Sawyer. Um, so it dealt
Right.
with like mythological and sort of like urban legend type stuff, but yeah, it didn't really get religious. And I think but I think that ambiguity is sort of what I think sort of started these hash of shows. what do you what do you can you think of another one before I get more into the list I have here?
Well, I mean, like, it's possible that Lost did it, but I mean, Lost ended in what, 2009? 2010? I feel like.
Yeah, I think it was around 2009.
Okay.
Um,
I mean, like, I don't know, just based chronologically, I don't really know if Lost could have started this whole craze, because this kind of, like, this recent trend of these quasi-religious shows coming up, it seems like it's something that's just been happening in the past year or 2 years maybe, and that one Lost was like 5 years ago at this point. I don't really know if there's something to do with a show that kind of started this trend. I feel like it's part of a greater trend towards more religious or quasi-religious entertainment in general. I mean, there was all those articles and things talking about how there was like something like a dozen, well, not a dozen, but like several faith-based movies coming out this year.
right.
That it was kind of strange, because it was kind of like this major influx of all these faith-based movies coming out, and now you're kind of seeing this same trend happening in TV. So I don't know if it's just, I mean, I'm sure part of it has to do with Hollywood and the fact that they don't want to take risks with brand new, like, risky shows or movies. So, and they've been doing sequels for a long time, ever since like this recession started, since sequels are like guaranteed money makers. But then I guess they kind of feel like they're getting towards the end of that rope, where like people are tired of sequels. We can't just keep pumping out sequels and hoping that people will just, love them. So I'm thinking maybe they're like, well, where else can we, maybe like some big time producers in Hollywood or something, well, where else can we turn, what other genres or subjects that can we turn to where there's guaranteed money in? Because in just regular secular movies, there's not necessarily any guaranteed money. It's just like the success is just going to be strictly based off of the quality of the movie, really. But I feel like if you have a faith-based movie, you're guaranteed at least some money. I mean, there are some people that will just go to see it just because they know it's faith-based.
Right.
And I feel like maybe that's kind of where that trend started with movies, at least in Hollywood, and maybe that's kind of bleeding over to TV now.
Yeah. I think it's funny because I think the vagueness of it, I think, is sometimes tricky because, well, I know for one, like, not to get right into the discussion of resurrection necessarily, but I know, spoiler alert, that my mom was saying that, like, it is very vague, and then in the last episode, that I think was like the season finale, there was this weird thing where, like, one of the characters, they're like in a field, and they notice that there are like a bunch of these like big like beetle like creatures, and so for me, who was not at all really, I mean, I was interested in the show. I think I just didn't really have time at the time to watch to get into it. But for somebody who was watching it and thinking how odd it was that it was just sort of like a family drama, like every now and again there would be another resurrected person, but there was no like action element to it. All of a sudden, for there to be that thing out of left field, like she's used to being burned because she got into Twin Peaks, and that started out very like normal, and then got real weird real quick. And she did not like that one bit. But so that's further down the list. But I'm gonna start down this list that I have, and I'll ask you if you've seen any of them and what you think about them. The first one I have is the 4400.
I've heard of that. I never saw that.
I never saw it either. I think my sister actually saw it, and she said like part of it had to do with like I thought it was just that they like appeared and that there was nothing really wrong with them. It was just sort of a mystery of how they, who they were and what they were about. But apparently they had powers too. Um,
Yeah.
and I thought like, the number I think is supposed to be like a reference to in Revelations when there's the Jewish people that are protected from the plagues in Revelation.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
so that seemed like a sort of quasi-religious show, but like we both said, we haven't seen it. So um, anybody who wants to talk about that in the comments, you can feel free to start that discussion. Um, Another one that I didn't check out, but that sort of piqued my interest was um, 666 Park Avenue. That was
Oh yeah, yeah.
Terry O'Quinn from Lost
Quinn,
was supposed to be
yeah.
like some sort of like devil character,
Right.
and I didn't see that either. But like the fact that he was on Lost, and I guess he like turns into a, because I actually didn't see the last season of Lost. I watched like recaps of like, that's why I'm actually going through Lost again now. Was I watched recaps of like most of the last season, and then watched the last episode. Um,
Really?
yeah, so there's still a lot of blanks.
That's sacrilege to a lot of Lost fans, man.
Yep,
That's like
I'm
that's just
sure.
like dirty stuff.
Yeah, I'm repenting for it now by going through it again. Um, but did you watch any of like 660 Park Avenue? Did
Nope.
that? Yeah,
Outside of the commercials and the trailers, I didn't see a thing from that show.
I thought it was.
So
I thought
yeah.
that was like, of all the things that are on this list, I think that was like one of the biggest like things that I saw that seemed like it was pandering.
Yeah.
That it was just sort of like making this like cartoonish, like devil character, and it was just like, are these people gonna trust him when he steals their baby, or I don't.
Yeah, I think that show, that show tanked and failed for good reason.
Yeah,
Um,
it didn't really look to me like it had any sort of promise. Um, there's the next one on my list is A Gifted Man, which I saw ads for, but like not many. I wasn't even really aware that it had been canceled, but
okay.
I think this was with um the I'm trying to think of the characters that he's played. I'm gonna look up this. But did you hear about the show at all?
I feel like I've heard the name of it. I may have seen a commercial or trailer for it at some point. I didn't watch any bit of it, so um,
Oh, it had
yeah, I don't really know
Patrick
anything about it.
Wilson as the main character, who is like he's a doctor who like has some sort of um, special power. Um, okay. So I just read the description on IMDb. It says it centers on an ultra-competitive surgeon whose life is changed forever when his ex-wife dies, and begins teaching him what life is all about from the hereafter.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds like a weird. So it wasn't even really like his power, which I guess is sort of.
Yeah.
I think that's sort of like false advertising from the title. It's like, I like worst superpower ever. You get to talk to your ex-wife when she's dead.
Yeah. Oh, this show. Yeah, I did see ads for this show. No, I never watched this.
Yeah, so that seems like a weird thing. Again, in the comments, if you've seen this and you know why it was canceled, let us know. The next show is Dead Like Me. This had
See,
Manny
you're gonna go through
Patinkin,
this entire list, and I don't think I've seen any of these shows outside of Touch. I don't think I've watched any of these shows.
which is funny because you think, we're the target audience, right? That we would, automatically, if we see something that's vaguely spiritual, that. But I think that's not really something that appeals to me. There needs to be, I think, something in the plot that is sort of like, because like you need, I think a main part of these shows is that you have some sort of mystery, and somehow they, through the plot developments, um, they hook you with, um, they hook you in somehow. They have some sort of impetus to go forward, and I think
Right.
whether it's like the actors in the show, the writers, something just doesn't work with these. Um, I
Yeah, I mean, like, I think these type of shows, and this is kind of the one of the reasons I was a little bit excited to talk about this sort of topic is I think these type of shows I don't really like the way they go about things. Really, I mean, I don't really like when shows decide that they're going to cherry pick certain aspects of religion or of one particular religion and just kind of throw it in willy nilly and just kind of throw it in for their own reasons or for their own devices and just try and decide that it's just going to work or they're just going to make it work or just going to it's just going to make sense because they're just going to make it up as they go or something like that. But it's just like I feel like if you're going to make a show with religious themes, um, you kind of have to go. There's really not much in the way of middle ground. I mean, you have to pick like some sort of either religion in general or some sort of denomination's teaching, and just kind of go with it. Whether for better or worse, whatever the case may be. I feel like when shows kind of try and play at this level of just like this like quasi religious type thing where it's just like some aspects are religious, some aspects aren't. The religion is kind of very foggy. It falls more on like this spirituality thing where it's just like oh it's just all spiritual. Well, what is like there's no real definition or qualifiers for uh, what is spiritual or what is thing. It just kind of plays to this air of like sci-fi mystery. Like oh we don't it's just like science fiction stuff. It's all like kind of spooky and kooky, and no one really knows how any of it works. And it's just like no, it's that's maybe a lot of people's perception of religion or how they view religion for themselves. It's just kind of whatever they want it to be whenever they want it. But it's not the real way. It's not the way that Christianity works, and it's not the way that a lot of other major religions in the world work as well. And it's just kind of like it just really hits home this vibe to me that it's just like religion brought to you by Hollywood. It's like this just feels like how Hollywood
right.
sees religion. That's just kind of like this weird, spooky, kooky thing that if it works for you, cool, whatever. Or like like you cherry pick whatever you like from it, and you kind of just use whatever you find is useful, or whatever you like from this one religion or that religion, and you kind of just do that thing.
Right.
You just kind of roll with it,
Yeah.
and you just kind of make it up as you go. And it's just like, no, that's not the way it works. Even by the rules of the religion that you say you're following, don't follow that. But from a writer's perspective, I feel like it's even more lazy because it's just like you're not actually picking like a compelling theme or concept to kind of like go about. Like I have a lot more respect for a show if they do an accurate portrayal of that religion, even if it's a negative portrayal, because I feel like at least they've done their research. At least they're going the full length of the field with it, and they're actually making a legitimate discussion about it, as opposed to kind of just picking parts of religion, throwing them in there to just kind of make it seem more mysterious or make their plot seem more mysterious or interesting or whatever.
Yeah, I think
because there's nothing really there. It's just kind of like a crutch.
Right.
It's just like we're just throwing this theme in there just to make it seem more interesting when it isn't really that interesting.
Yeah.
We're just throwing it in there just to kind of
I feel like it can be one of like three things, and one of which I sympathize with, and two that I really don't like is one, it's sort of like what I was talking to you yesterday about how there are certain things that are nihilistic and stuff, and they're usually on the side of, um, well, if meaning doesn't really exist, well, let's make up our own. And so you have these sort of people
Right.
that think, okay, I'm going to take what I like out of spirituality, out of all these different religions, or out of
Mm-hmm.
this one religion, and then with my show, I'm going to play around with that, see what appeals to me, and then
Right.
that's how they go about it. Then there are others who think that you, um, oh, well, think that like Christian people, just as long as there's enough spirituality where they don't have to work as hard, they're just sort of laying back on the fact that like if this is a vaguely spiritual show, if I have a writer who's used to writing something that gets into religion but not really too much, um,
Right.
to where it's offensive or something, then there's that. There's somebody that's, I think, mostly based on greed and just wants to produce something that, people that are religious and non-religious people will like, that are just um, into like supernatural stuff. And then
Right.
there's a third kind which I think Lost falls into, where I think that there are people that are willing to search, at least if they don't have a defined worldview, they want to use um, their writing just to sort of, it's almost like prayer, I would say. And I think like sometimes when I'm reading stuff like Psalms or um, different books like that in the Bible that are more like petitions, um,
Mm-hmm.
I sort of think about how that's a very, like, to read like David when he's like um, just calling out to God and he doesn't know what's going on, um,
Right.
is sort of like how I characterize it. And since that's biblical, I sort of think, well, if I were to do some piece of writing where I start out writing it not really knowing an answer, it's just sort of like praying, where I'm thinking, okay, this is something that is spiritual. It's depicting God in a certain way, just because I'm confused and I don't really understand what God does in this sort of situation. And then most of the times, more often than not, I find almost like God is answering me through how I resolve the story in the end. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like that's probably why Lost, in the end, had that sort of neat and tidy ending that did tie to religion, and
Mm-hmm.
not everybody liked that because, um, in the end, like I feel like he had an idea that he was going not in some place that would be comfortable for him, but not in a way that he was just necessarily going to leave it all up in the air, in the end. So, but there are two
Right.
shows I think on this list that I at least have seen enough of the things that I made a judgment call on them. There was Joan of Arcadia and Saving Grace. Um,
Okay.
in Joan of Arcadia, it was like this teenage girl who I think every episode would talk to God, but God would always like have possessed like random people. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, but that just seemed like a show where it was just like, you know, this sage type deity that was just like the fact that he was like possessing all different people, it made me sort of think that like the way it was representing God was, it's sort of like he could be anybody. It's like you
Mm-hmm.
it's like the combined wisdom of the world basically. Um and so
Mm-hmm.
that just the metaphorical implications of that, I was just sort of not interested in it. And then in a similar way, Saving Grace was this weird this weird thing where like I just read the description. I didn't know what the inciting incident was, but apparently she hit somebody with a car and she's like drunk driving, and
Mm-hmm.
she's like praying to God for forgiveness, and an angel comes down, and for some reason he's like making sure she's doing like her penance or something. Um,
Okay.
but the way they depict the angel is like he's like almost as vulgar and like bad behaving as she is. Um,
Okay.
and I've seen this a number of times, like in the movie Dogma, and in I think there was a movie Michael with John Travolta, where he was an
Okay.
angel, where it's like making they're all just about making God or making angels just like us to sort of like in one way there it it might be like some sort of reformed Christian who like wants to people not to give Christianity such a bad rap or something, but
Mm.
they go about it at the expense of respecting God or respecting angels in any
Well,
way.
Dogma was kind of like the exact opposite of that spectrum. I mean, Kevin Smith was kind of like trying to show the the faults and the negative and like the negative side of religion,
Right.
basically through that movie. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory in the title. I mean, the title of the movie is Dogma. It's not like this is going to be a movie that's like, hey, religion is great for some people. Like, it's called Dogma. I'm pretty sure that it's just going to say religion's bad overall.
Right.
But the whole the concept that bringing God down to our level, basically, um, that's a very popular concept, and it's not even something that's only happens for specific people, or it's not only a concept that's brought up in movies or TV shows or writing because of certain artists and writers and stuff like that, but it's a lot of everyday people believe that sort of stuff, even if they wouldn't necessarily say it. Like oh, God understands. I can't make it out to this or to that, or I can't do this or that, or I can't be bothered for this or that. And it's like, oh, he gets it. He understands. He knows how busy I am. He knows what it's like. And it's just basically putting God on our level, where it's just like he he knows he can't do everything. He knows whatever. He understands, type thing. And it's just that like he's in a way just like us. Like his expectations are just like ours. His personality in certain ways is just like us. He has like and I think the mentality kind of goes this far, although I don't know if anyone would ever say it, is that he kind of has flaws just like us. He has faults just like us.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think anyone would necessarily ever say that if they were asked, but the mentality kind of breeds that, and that certainly comes off in shows in movies and TV shows with angels, being foul-mouthed or just being reckless and just kind of being hedonistic to a certain respect or something like that.
Yeah, I think in some ways it's sort of like a new version of you know um, like Greek mythology where that was sort of a commonplace thing where Zeus, most of the gods were based off Zeus adultery, and
Right.
there was like Bacchus and all these gods that and it's sort of funny with that with them it was sort of their way of explaining why certain aspects of nature are chaotic, and I don't know if maybe that's sort of like you're saying, that's sort of like us saying if we're messed up, that's because God is messed up, and
Right.
it's just a way of sort of explaining that away. But then I think that leaves us with these new these new shows that I think the fact that they're like Touch, and but you can tell me a little bit about Touch, but from what I see of like Resurrection and um, the Believe show, it seems like the fact that they're so they seem to be like a little bit afraid of making any sort of statement, um,
Hmm.
leaves them a little bit like bland. And
Right.
I don't know if you could explain whether Touch was just sort of like based on like supernatural powers, or whether there was more of like a spiritual element to it.
like Touch is kind of like in terms of spirituality and religion, it does touch on it. No, but it has elements of that, but it's not ever really. I don't remember. I don't believe it was. It's been a little while since I've seen it. If there's any spiritual religious aspects, it's much more brought up in the first season. The second season is just very much conspiracy theory and kind of running from the man type thing, which is what ruined that show, and that's why it got canceled in the second season. But the first season is, if there's any aspects of spirituality, religion in it, it's kind of like a God in the numbers type thing, which is not the first time I've heard that.
Right, there was that movie, The Knowing, that was about that. That was like, Nicolas Cage, and I actually that I think has a very like humanistic ending where like, somehow, like I think, and this is spoil, not that was a critically acclaimed piece that everybody should see, but if you want to watch it, spoiler alert, the world ends at the end of it. I'm pretty sure, and I think the basic understanding is that like, Nicolas Cage knows that it's gonna end.
No.
I mean that wasn't my pun. That was their pun. I'm sorry.
All right.
But anyway, he knows that the world's gonna end, and his dad is a pastor, so I think he's like trying to spare his dad from finding out that the world is not going to end the way the Bible says it is.
Okay.
But he does something like where I don't think he ever tells him, and I think the thing is supposed to be that like he has this human compassion on his father, that even though his father is wrong, that he finds a bond that like is some weird spiritual thing that is outside of religion somehow.
Right.
So that I give that credit at least for making some sort of humanistic thing, even though I don't agree with it necessarily. And I think that's a weird, that leaves us with probably a topic to be touched on, the fact that Nicolas Cage is going to be in the new Left Behind movie, and that's coming down the pipe somewhere. Did you see the new trailer for it?
No, I've been staying away from everything related to that movie. I just can't. I can't even look at it. It's just he has I've seen the poster, and he has the bird hair in the poster.
He does have the bird hair.
And it's like, how can you possibly expect me to take this seriously if he has like a less exaggerated version of the bird hair?
I looked at that and I was just like, why is that so awkward? Like, they couldn't Photoshop that? Like, if his wig is that bad in the movie, if that is a wig, then why could they not Photoshop that for the poster? I don't understand it.
Yeah,
it's so weird.
I don't get it. Unless it's just some inside joke from the graphic designer who developed their posters for them. In which case, that guy is an amazing troll. To get that through.
We bow to you, master troll.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Touch didn't really go back kind of what we were talking about with what you asked me to talk about, and then interrupted me, and then let me finish.
Well, excuse me.
No, I don't really care. But Touch didn't really go into organized religion that much. It just kind of went on the like kind of like a "we are the world" type mentality, where it's just like everyone's connected, and everything you do has an effect on everyone around you, and it's just kind of like it wasn't a bad message. It was like, be good, be kind to your neighbor, basically, type thing, or be good to your neighbor.
Right.
Because the whole show was basically about how we like to use the title is that we touch other people in our lives, and those people touch other people, and they touch other people. So it's just like even the littlest things you do can have the biggest effects, can have huge consequences for other people or for events or whatever. Because it's just kind of based on that, like just I don't know if it's the butterfly effect type thing, where it's just like you make one small decision and it deals, huge dividends. I know that has to do with like changing things in the past and like time travel and all that, which is not something that's discussed in the show, but it does kind of. And the whole thing about the kid was that the kid could see the connections and he could orchestrate events based on because he knew what would happen. Because he knew like if he put the marble here, so and so would trip, so and so would catch that person, and then they meet each other, and those two people fall in love, basically, or something like that. Yes, but if he never put that marble there, she never would have tripped, and they never would have met, and and all that sort of stuff.
Right.
So that was kind of the way the show was kind of formatted to begin with. So it didn't really go into religion that much. But I still liked the way they did things. I thought it was pretty cool. And it was a show where like the primary theme and the primary message was, like basically help other people out and be kind to other people, like in your day-to-day life, which I feel like is not necessarily a popular message, especially in entertainment media and stuff like that.
Right.
So, but back to the theme overall of just spirituality and religion and entertainment. It's just, I don't know. It just feels like it just bothers me that so many shows and so many that movies just try to kind of like play at it and just kind of use it because they know it's gonna equal dollar signs at the end, or because it's gonna be a literary crux that helps them get over this one problem that they had with this one character that they couldn't make him more compelling, so they decided to just throw in some religious aspects to it.
Yeah, I think and we gotta wrap this up, but I think one person that I think is most I think egregious in that area and I think his work suffers for it, even though I do like some of his things, is Stephen King. They're just random characters that are religious that are just crazy, and there doesn't really seem to be a like I know in Misery, the I think it's a good movie, but it's sort of odd the times when the person who's the main thing is she's supposed to be obsessed with this author, but randomly she's like yelling at him for like putting cursing in his book, and like it doesn't really seem like that connects with her obsession. It seems like it comes out of nowhere, and he just like has something against somebody he knows that's religious, and then
maybe has bad experiences. Who knows?
Right, and like in Carrie, I think that it fits more because her mom is supposed to be really oppressive of her, not let her like go out with boys and stuff like that, and it all sort of stems from religion. I don't think that makes the story any better, but there's that, and then there's In the Mist. I think I haven't actually watched the whole thing, but once stuff starts going gray, the one woman is immediately the first to sort of suggest that it's like the apocalypse, and the fact that there are these weird cricket creatures. I don't know why people are like on the like they're like jumping down her throat, and I'm like, well, what would you think? What's your ideas about what this is? But she apparently turns into the villain, and I haven't, like I said, I haven't seen the whole thing, but that's I think that's another tangent that unfortunately we can't go down, but maybe one of these podcasts we can do like a top 10 why the heck is this person religious and crazy for no reason.
Okay.
Because I
Yeah.
think that's a list that needs to be made. I need to
We
go
have to
drink
do a
something.
top 20, top 25 for that list.
Yeah. Yep. It's a
'Cause
long
there
one.
are a lot. Yeah. All right.
But for now, we've been Matt and John of graphicallychristian.com. If you want to check us out at Wizard World Philadelphia, as I said, we'll be there June 19th to 22nd under our Graphically Christian banner. And
Yes, sir.
hopefully you enjoyed yourself. And you can post in the comments about all those supernatural shows that none of us have seen for good reason. All right, take care. See
All
ya.
right.